So I've had a few days of playtime now with the new update, which is update 4.0 for Battlefield 2042. I pretty much specifically delayed this video just because I wanted to get in some proper playtime and not just make a video after, an hour of playtime, because there's so much that's actually changed with this update. So today we're going to be going through all of my thoughts on both the pros and the cons of this update, and then at the end of the video I'm going to kind of go through whether I think the game is worth coming back to, because I know that is a really big question that's kind of been floating around the community right now. There are a lot of players who obviously own the game but just aren't really playing it, and a lot of people have been asking me, is this worth coming back to now? So stay tuned to the end of the video. I'm going to do my best to answer that question, but on the way we'll also just go through the pros and cons of this update. Before we get into it, if you guys are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is going to be plenty more Battlefield 2042 content on the way, but with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So just quickly, my overall thoughts on the update is that it is a really positive step. I'm not going to lie, I was pretty nervous going into this update because there was so many things that they were talking about fixing. They mentioned there was going to be 400 plus changes, and I kind of thought that with so many fixes they were probably going to break, they're going to fix 400 things and break 200 things. That was kind of the expectation that I had going into this update. Now, I have noticed a few little bugs here and there, but for the most part this update has gone down really, really well, and so yeah, overall very, very pleased with it. But with that being said, let's get stuck into the actual pros and then we'll go through the cons as well. Now, the main change for me personally is actually the HUD changes that they've made. If you guys go back to my beta review all the way back in October, that was one of the first things that I called out about this game, was that although the HUD looks nice, it was just way too much. There was too much on the screen. There's too many bright little indicators all over the screen, and you just die to people who you can't even see because there's a big C flag in front of their head. So that's been one of my biggest issues really since the launch of the game, and I will say that all of the changes they've made in this update, both in terms of like the opacity of those different HUD elements, but also just the scaling, being able to turn certain stuff on and off, it is all really well done in my opinion. And I think the HUD now is in a place where it's pretty much perfect. I don't think they need to do any more changes to the HUD. Any changes at this point would be more of a luxury thing. There's nothing that actually needs to happen, if that makes sense. So very pleased with the HUD changes, and yeah, that's probably one of my biggest takeaways from this update. Again, I know a lot of this stuff should have been done at launch. I know a lot of people are still in that mentality, and it is completely correct. This stuff should have been done at launch, but for me personally, I'm not stuck living in November 2021. We are living in April 2022, and I'm not still hung up on how the game should have launched. We are where we are. I've come to terms with that, and we're just, any positive changes from here on out, yeah, they should have been done earlier, but they weren't, and now if they do get done, that is still a positive. So that's probably my main point, is that the HUD changes are really, really solid in my opinion. Something else that I'm very happy about with this update is that the game just kind of feels more stable. I don't know what really changed. I don't know what specific stuff in the patch notes actually led to it feeling more stable, because there wasn't actually that much that I thought, oh, that's going to make it a lot more polished and a lot more stable, but it just feels more finished, if that makes sense. I think a lot of it is to do with some of those animation fixes that they did, where sometimes you would start sprinting and your left hand would just start wigging out and it would just look stupid, and it didn't really affect the gameplay, but it just felt unfinished. That kind of stuff is just seems to be gone now. I think the movement feels a little bit improved. I don't know if there's actually anything that they changed there, but it just feels a bit nicer and more, I guess, more responsive really when you're moving around. And then even the gunplay as well feels a little bit cleaner to me too. So I guess the best way to summarize that point is that, yeah, the game just feels more finished, which obviously it should. We're in April, so like I said, it obviously should feel more finished than it did 6 months ago, but it is a step in the right direction, and hopefully the May update kind of doubles down on that a little bit. I'll touch on that a little bit later on, but for right now, the game just feels a bit cleaner, if that makes sense. Now, the final, really big positive, there's a lot of smaller positives, but I'm not really going to go into all of that because it'll be a half an hour video, but the next big positive for me is all of the attachment changes that they made. Now, this was something that didn't really need to be done in this update, in my opinion, but it is really good that they did it. This wasn't the most pressing issue for the game, that the attachments weren't, all completely different from each other, but from what I can tell so far from the attachment changes, they all feel really, really solid. It actually does now feel like if you use, grip A, your gun will act differently than if you're using grip B. So that's a really good change in my opinion. It just kind of freshens things up a bit, because now I actually want to go through all of the weapons again and try different attachments, see what works the best and what doesn't work, which to be fair kind of sucks because I've just done 20 weapon breakdowns and now a lot of them are probably irrelevant, but I will get around to fixing those anyway, so you guys don't have to worry. But yeah, it just does feel a bit fresher when it comes to the weapons. For me personally, I have for each weapon probably an attachment in each slot that I'm using 90% of the time, and then every now and then then I'll change the scope, or maybe every now and then chuck on a different, like a suppressor or something. But just from my playtime so far since this update, I actually feel like I want to use a different grip for a different situation. I don't think it's like completely drastically different than it was. It's just that it's a bit more obvious now, and it almost feels like the, you know, you get the pros of what that attachment says, but then the cons of it are a bit more obvious, so then you can kind of tell how that attachment is negatively affecting your weapon, and then you switch to another one and it kind of fixes it for that area. So that's another really big change for me, and like I said, I kind of didn't expect them to do that so early. I knew eventually they would have to get around to kind of fixing the attachments, but yeah, very happy that they have got around to that so early, and that's going to be really good when we do start getting some new weapons. They don't have to all feel like they've got the same attachments, so definitely another really big positive there. Now, moving on to some of the cons, and to be fair, some of this isn't even to do with this update, it's more to do like the cons with the game in general. So I think there's really not that many cons that have presented themselves from the actual update. It's more like what the update didn't cover, if that makes sense. So the first big thing that still stands out to me is that vehicles are still just too abundant. There's just too many vehicles on the map. This update did reduce, I think, from 3 to 2 in each sort of section, or each class, I guess you would say, of vehicle. So technically there has been a vehicle reduction in this update, and it is definitely a little bit noticeable. Like, you can tell there are less vehicles, but in my opinion, there are still just too many vehicles. I'm dying every second death I get. I swear it's just from a tank. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just a bot. Let me know in the comments if you guys feel the same. Maybe I'm just playing too aggressively. Maybe I'm just running directly at a tank and dying. I don't really know, but to me it still does feel like tanks are, well, not just tanks, but vehicles in general are a little bit too prominent. I don't think they are necessarily overpowered. I think a tank should be strong. I think a chopper should be strong, but when there are 87 choppers flying around, it's kind of just overbearing, I guess. So I'm keen to hear what you guys think of that one. Let me know in the comments if you guys think, you know, the vehicles are in a good spot now. Let me know if you agree with me that there's still a little bit too many. I don't think it's like needs to be halved again, for example, but I think just a slight reduction, another like 30% less, if that makes sense, that would be, I think, the sweet spot. So I thought I'd mention that because that was something that they touched on in this update, and it still just doesn't feel where it should be. But with that being said, even though I said maybe they don't need to be nerfed, maybe there is now the perfect amount of vehicles, and maybe they just are too strong. I don't really know. So like I said, definitely let me know down in the comments. The only other con that I can think of, honestly, is that there's still a few smaller bugs here and there. There doesn't seem to be any game-breaking bugs. Like, most of the stuff that they said they were going to fix in this update, it seems to be fixed. I haven't run into like the loadout bug, I haven't run into the ADS bug, for example. So that stuff seems to be fixed, but there's still just a little sort of section of bugs that are still there. I noticed myself on Hourglass like falling through the rooftop. I'll try and show the clip for you guys. I literally just fell through the roof like 3 times in a row. Just little things like that, that it's not game breaking, but it's just more like, what the hell's going on? Like, that shouldn't happen. Hopefully they can try and stamp that stuff out in the next update. Overall though, I'm definitely very happy with this update. I think it's a massive step in the right direction, and the reason I gave this a few days was because I kind of thought that a lot of people in the community wouldn't be so positive about it, and I was actually trying to give myself an extra couple of days to kind of gauge my own opinion on the update, but actually see what everyone else is saying too, because if I really liked it but everyone else thinks it's shit, then generally in that situation I kind of try and reassess and, you know, not change my opinion, but just double check that I'm not, you know, just being overly positive, for example. So I've been paying attention to a lot of different creators out there and seeing what they think, and pretty much everyone that I've seen so far has said this update is really positive. And yeah, it's just a nice change to have a bit of excitement and happiness in this community. It's been months now. It's pretty much been since launch day that the community's just been so divided, and to just go on Twitter and everyone is going, damn, this is a really good update. That's just a nice change. So kudos to DICE and EA and everyone. You know, I don't know if Ripple Effect had any changes, I can't remember. I think there was Portal changes in here, so I assume Ripple Effect have had some changes too. Kudos to all of the teams who have done that, and I think we just now need to double down on this in May. Obviously we're getting another update next month that I assume, like, there's not going to be any content, so I assume it will just be bug fixes again, the sort of like performance and stability type stuff that we're sort of seeing in this update. And yeah, I think the most important thing for the May update is just to double down on this. This has been a really successful update with a lot of good fixes, and now all of the little fixes that just still need to happen, that is what they need to focus on in May. So really big step in the right direction, and let's just hope that they can kind of follow up with this one, because obviously if the May update sucks, then it's just going to be a step backwards. So now that we're stepping in the right direction, we need to keep moving forward, and that's what I'm really hopeful for in May. Now, essentially the point of the video, like I said, was to kind of just discuss is the game worth coming back to? I know a lot of you guys, and I want to give a big shout out to you guys who have been tuning into the videos and you don't even play the game still. I get a lot of comments just saying like, I don't even bother playing the game at the moment, I'm still just checking in with your channel just to support the channel and just see how the game's going. So massive thank you to all of you guys who are doing that, and obviously you guys probably want to know, is the game worth coming back to? I think this update doesn't really do enough to warrant like coming back and being completely active again. There's no content, there's nothing drastically different. So if you didn't like Battlefield 2042 last week, I don't know if this update will change anything that's going to make you love it this week, if that makes sense. But I do think this is now almost like a foundational update where we now have this like solid baseline for where the game is. There's still so much work to be done, but it's in a spot now where it is playable and it's actually, you can go out and have some fun. I've taken a month off because the game was just so buggy and there was just so many issues, and after playing like 2 or 3 sessions between the update dropping and making this video, I now have that itch again to actually go back and play. So I don't know if it's worth coming back for if you haven't played in months. It's worth downloading the update and just trying, so it can't hurt obviously, but I still don't think the game is where it needs to be to like bring everyone back and get this game properly running again. But I do think that if the May update is another solid update like this one, and then obviously in June or July we're probably going to get season 1, I really do think that when that starts happening, this game will be worth coming back to, because I think it's in a much better state now, and I think really the only thing missing is like the map changes that they're talking about. Obviously those need to be implemented. I still think the specialist system needs to be addressed, and then obviously we need some content. So they've talked about all 3 of those things, and once we start getting that, I do think the game is worth coming back to. As for right now, if you've got the itch to play, it's definitely worth giving it a try because it does feel very much improved. But if you're worried you're going to miss out on anything, you're not going to miss out if you don't download the update. So that's pretty much how I would summarize that. It is a very big improvement, but we're still not quite where we need to be. So like I said, hopefully May and June and July are all really positive, and I do still think this game can turn around in the future. That is going to do it for this one though, guys. Like I said, the attachment changes have all sort of kicked in now, and I will be doing a few videos in the coming weeks on essentially what's changed and what are now the best attachments to use. I've already done that in the past, and then this has essentially made those videos redundant. So I will be back in the next couple of weeks with a lot of like attachment videos, and there's still going to be more weapon breakdowns and stuff like that. So keep your eyes peeled for those, and if you guys are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. If you want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.